Hello everyone, this is King Gratz here. Welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the Erik Karlsson swap streak. So this is picking up on where I left off in part 1. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, please go and watch that video because that provides a lot of information and explains how we get to this part. So as I mentioned, the second blockbuster of Erik Karlsson's trade history essentially involves him getting traded in the offseason of 2023 to the Pittsburgh Penguins along with Dylan Hamaliuk and a third-round pick in 2026. And the Sharks acquire Mikael Granlund, Mike Hoffman, Jan Rutta, and a 2024 first-round pick. And at the same time, the Montreal Canadiens come in here as a third party and send Rem Pitlick to the Penguins. And in exchange, the Canadiens acquire Jeff Petrie, Casey DeSmith, Nathan Legare, and a 2025 second-round pick in order to complete this deal because of salary cap constraints involving Karlsson's contract. Now, with all the moving parts in what is a relatively recent blockbuster, there's a lot of things that happen within the next year and a half of this trade. So, looking at the easy parts on Pittsburgh's side of things, Rem Pitlick was later traded by the Penguins to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for a seventh round pick in the 2026 draft. For Pitlick, he would spend a little bit of time with Chicago, but ultimately he essentially had his contract expire with the Blackhawks and he has not been signed by any other team. So basically, we can end that line here. And the seventh round pick is still with the Penguins to this day. On top of that, Karlsson is still with the Penguins. However, I'm not sure if he's going to get traded again for his career. And Dylan Hamaliuk and the third round pick in 26 are still with Pittsburgh. So we can essentially end that here for the Penguins side of things. For the Sharks, there are some moving parts with regards to the players. Mikael Granlund and Jan Rutta are still with San Jose and are some potential trade candidates within the next couple months of me making this video, mainly because Granlund has revitalized his career with San Jose during their rebuild, and Jan Rutta is a veteran piece on their blue line. I'm not sure if he could get traded, but I don't know. We've seen other things happen. And Mike Hoffman, his career ended abruptly after his time with the Sharks because he basically fell off a cliff offensively and he was on a pretty bloated contract. So he went to the Sharks, and once his contract expired, he never got another contract. So that's the end of that for him. The first round pick in 2024, I mentioned it in a previous video where I said that this first round pick was later traded by the Sharks to the Buffalo Sabres along with a second round pick in the same year, and the Sharks got an earlier first round pick, number 11 overall, and they used that pick to draft Sam Dickinson, while the Sabres used the picks they got back to draft Konsta Helenius and Adam Kleba. This is still a very recent trade, and all of these guys are still with their respective clubs, so can't really say anything about these players right now. We'll have to probably return to this blockbuster in the future. Looking at Montreal's side of things, this was, of course, a big part of them getting even more assets because all three of the players listed here, Petrie, DeSmith, and Legare, would all get traded separately. Jeff Petrie, a couple days after this trade, would then get traded by the Canadiens to the Detroit Red Wings for Gustav Lindstrom and a fourth round pick in 2025. That fourth is still with the Canadiens to this day, and Jeff Petrie is also still with the Red Wings. So we can hang on to that for now. Gustav Lindstrom was with Montreal for a little bit before he was ultimately claimed on waivers by the Anaheim Ducks. So therefore that ends his line in this trade history here. For Casey DeSmith, he was later sold to the Vancouver Canucks in a separate deal that brought back Tanner Pearson and a third round pick in 2025. Tanner Pearson was on an expiring contract and he essentially was dumped to Montreal for salary relief while the Canucks got themselves another backup goalie. The third round pick is still with Montreal, and Pearson, once his contract expired, he left as a free agent to Vegas, while Casey DeSmith had a pretty solid year as a backup in Vancouver, and then he left for Dallas in free agency as well. For Nathan Legare, one of the very few prospects that were left in the Penguins' very depleted prospect pool, he, after being sent to Montreal, was then involved in a one-for-one deal with New Jersey, where he went to the Devils in exchange for Arnaud Durandeau. Durandeau ultimately never amounted to much at the NHL level, and he eventually left for the KHL after being buried in the minors. While Nathan Legare does have a future with New Jersey, he is still a prospect in their farm system. I'm not sure when he might make the NHL, but for now, this is kind of where we're at with him. And then for the second round pick in 2025 that the Canadiens got in the original deal, that is still with Montreal. So that basically ends this whole history of the swap streak for Erik Karlsson. We still have a lot of young prospects and some recent trades that could pan out into other deals, especially in the near future, looking at the Sharks and their rebuild with Mikael Granlund and Jan Rutta. For Erik Karlsson, I'm going to say that he might get traded again in a couple of years because the Penguins are a team that's desperately in need of more prospects and in a rebuild, considering that they have one of the oldest rosters in the NHL. And we're basically getting into the twilight of Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and all those great players over there. And for Karlsson, he's essentially the youngest guy out of their core right now of veterans. I know his contract is pretty big right now if you look at the cap hit, but I think that you could probably see another deal involving Karlsson in the future, assuming that he doesn't lose his offensive production and that he stays healthy for his time in his 30s. But yeah, that basically ends the swap streak of Erik Karlsson here. Fairly recent, a lot of impactful areas within recent NHL history. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this one, and I will see you all in the next video.